Welcome back to the Hill Update. I'm your host, Dean Ellis, a member of Parliament for Niagara West. Joining me on the show today is Colin Carrie, who's the member of Parliament for Oshawa. Colin was elected back in 2004, and his parliamentary experience includes being the parliamentary secretary to industry, health, and environment. Prior to getting elected, Colin ran a successful chiropractic and wellness clinic. Colin graduated as a doctor of chiropractic from the Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College. Colin, thanks for joining us on the show this week.
Thanks for having me, Dean.
Listen, I want to talk a bit about the trip that the Prime Minister made to Brazil to talk about climate and some other things. Let's just show a quick clip from the House, and then I'd love to get your thoughts.
After the Prime Minister took his private jet, burned 105 tons of jet fuel, and emitted 300 tons of greenhouse gases to go down to Brazil, he claimed that Canadians who are opposed to his carbon tax are just confused by disinformation. No, Canadians aren't stupid, Mr. Speaker. They know that the Parliamentary Budget Officer has calculated that 100% of middle-class Canadians pay more in the tax than they get back. The Prime Minister already also said, though, that this will be the subject of the next election. I couldn't agree more. So why don't we have a carbon tax election now?
All right, so just a couple things to highlight, Colin, for you, and I love your thoughts. Over 105 tons of jet fuel, over 300 tons of emissions. We know that the average family uses about 3 tons per person. Just we need to put that in context for our listeners in terms of what that means, in terms of what we're asking families or what the Prime Minister is asking families to do versus what he does by his own example.
Well, I think the biggest problem for Canadians is going to be how out of touch this government is with the average person. The Liberals, and they've got this on the record, Dean, they know that they are intentionally going to cause pain to meet their net zero, their criteria, and they will do anything to get there. They're making Canadians feel shamed because they have to put food on the table or heat their house or drive their kids to wherever they need to go this week, their doctor's appointments. The average Canadian, as you said, 3 tons. The Prime Minister on this one trip, blew that away by 100 times. So if we look at his quotes, and I would like to quote him right now, Dean, I have it right here. He said, "It is really, really easy when you are on a short-term survive. I got to be able to pay the rent this month. I've got to be able to buy groceries for my kids, to say, okay, let's put climate change as a slightly lower priority." This is what our Prime Minister said. And then he basically said, there's a sense that affordability is in direct contrast with our moral responsibility to protect the planet. In other words, Dean, our Prime Minister is trying to shame Canadians into doing with less, and in some cases having to choose between eating and heating. And when you look at our results, and I have it right here.
That's good. I was going to ask you about where Canada stands in the world in their job to reduce emissions. So you got that information. That's great.
I really do. And it's out of Canada now ranks 62 out of 67 countries on climate change performance. So in other words, the Prime Minister says it's okay that Canadians are starving and lining up for food banks, and we should just congratulate ourselves the fact that we made 62nd. And why are we paying such high taxes for such poor results, Dean? This is incredibly out of touch with reality.
Well, and you and I know in terms of what we hear in our offices and people struggling. So I guess, part of the out of touch or the tone deafness is really the fact that even though he's flying around the world, he's telling people that really they need to worry less about themselves and worry about, what's going on, even though he's not prepared to set any example. We got about a minute left in this segment. Just love your thoughts and how that you think people are going to respond to that type of comment.
Well, I think we have to let them respond, Dean. This is why we're calling for a carbon tax election. The Prime Minister basically said, and you saw it in the opening clip with our leader, Pierre, he basically said this is going to be the issue. So why is he waiting? Canadians are sick and tired. And what I'm concerned about, Dean, with, and I think we're going to be talking a little bit about homelessness in the next segment, more and more people in Oshawa are losing their homes, unable to afford the rent. And it's directly due to the increased costs that we have now with this climate plan that isn't doing anything for the climate. And we're seeing our food prices rise 36% greater and faster than in the United States. And it's because the unique taxing system that Trudeau has put in to our country versus the US.
All right, we'll talk about that when we come back for break.